Vietnam is a dream destination for many people, but is there a dark side lurking behind the glossy tourist brochures? We spent a month traveling Vietnam, and in this video, we're going to share the biggest mistakes tourists make that could end up ruining your trip. Let's start by talking about everyone's favorite topic, and that is of course street food. If you want to enjoy the street food culture of Vietnam, but not spend your holiday hugging the toilet bowl, there are some critical mistakes that you need to avoid. Eating street food in Vietnam is generally pretty safe. During our 1-month trip, we ate at street stalls constantly with no issues. Since we're both huge fans of street food, we've come up with our own set of guidelines that we like to follow. Let's start with the most important criteria. When looking for a place to eat, make sure that you choose a street stall with lots of locals eating there. Not only is this a good quality indicator, but the high turnover also means that the food is likely to be that bit fresher. Some other good tips are to make sure that the stall and the area around it looks clean and that there aren't flies crawling over the food. I actually remember looking at a street stall once in Thailand, and just before I was about to order, I saw a rat scurrying away from underneath it. So don't eat at places like that. Most street stalls will specialize in 1 or 2 dishes using largely the same ingredients. That makes a lot of sense because of the lack of space, but it also means that the ingredients they use are likely to be fresher. So, if you see a street stall selling a huge variety of pre-made food or with a huge menu, then just give it a big miss, as it's unlikely that the food is going to be very fresh. Perhaps the biggest mistake you can make in Vietnam is eating at street stalls that have become really popular with tourists after being featured by famous chefs such as Anthony Bourdain or Somebody Feed Phil. We read so many reviews of places that had been featured by celebrity chefs where a significant amount of people had gotten brutal food poisoning after the place became famous. To add insult to injury, you'll probably also end up paying 2 to 3 times as much, have lower quality food, and end up waiting in line for a lot longer than if you just went to another less famous place. If street food is safe to eat in Vietnam, then surely your hotel must be safe to eat at as well. Well, ironically enough, perhaps not. You'll find a lot of small hotels or homestays dotted around Vietnam. For example, the one we stayed at in Sapa only had 2 rooms. Although these places will usually have a restaurant, they're mostly set up to cater to the people staying at the hotel. This means their food turnover is quite low, and the staff are often inexperienced with safe food handling as well. We discovered this firsthand when my wife got food poisoning twice at our hotel in Sapa. When chatting to other travelers later in the trip, we discovered that they had also gotten food poisoning at their small hotel. So, if you don't want to become intimate with the hotel plumbing, stick to busy street food stalls and popular restaurants, and if you can, avoid eating at small hotels. There are a lot of amazing places to explore in Vietnam, so to help you save time planning your trip so that you can start exploring as soon as you arrive, we've created an interactive Google map and travel guide. The map includes location pins for the top places to visit, the best neighborhoods to explore, and our favorite restaurants that serve delicious and authentic food. This custom map and guide will make your trip easier by having all our recommendations and must-visit spots right in your pocket whilst traveling. Our personal tips are included in each map pin to help you get the most out of each location. You can download the map directly into your Google Maps app so that you can find the best spots at the click of a button and save hours of research. You'll find the link in the description below. Since we're on the topic of food, let's talk about eating deep-fried food. Don't worry, I'm not going to start giving you health advice, but eating deep-fried food at the wrong places can most definitely make you sick. During our trip to Vietnam, we spent 5 days in Sapa, staying in a small hotel with nothing but 5-star reviews. Unfortunately, after the 2nd day, my wife became sick after eating deep-fried spring rolls from the hotel restaurant. After doing some more research, we discovered that there could be several causes for this. The most common cause in small restaurants is that they reuse the oil too many times, and that causes the oil to become toxic. It's also possible that the restaurant didn't strain the oil properly between uses, didn't store it properly, or they might even have overheated the oil. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what the cause was. Unless it's a very busy restaurant, I would just skip eating deep fried food in Vietnam altogether. This next mistake is all about H2O, which, to those of you who haven't watched The Waterboy recently, is water. Unless you're literally about to die from thirst, do not drink the tap water in Vietnam. It's completely fine to shower and wash your face in, and you don't really need to panic if a little bit touches your lips, but don't chug it. I also wouldn't necessarily recommend brushing your teeth with the tap water either. Although the bigger cities do have water treatment plants, they don't always treat the water to the same standards as you're used to back home. The other problem is the aging infrastructure, which can leach heavy metals and other contaminants into the water. Instead of drinking tap water, just stick to buying bottled water. Most hotels will normally give you a couple bottles every day, and they might also have a big jug of filtered water in the lobby where you can just refill your own water bottles. When you're out exploring for the day, you can always pop into a convenience store and buy some cold bottles of water, as the sun can be very intense. Moving on from food, let's talk about how to get around. One of the biggest mistakes you can make in Vietnam is to take a taxi. If you spend any time reading through Vietnam travel forums, you'll hear countless stories about people getting scammed in taxis. But before we get into that, make sure you subscribe for more no-nonsense travel tips that will help you plan your own grand adventure. The two most common taxi scams are switching the bills and pretending the meter is broken. The switching bill scam is where the taxi driver will switch the bill that you gave them with a smaller denomination. This is really easy to pull off in Vietnam because of all the zeros that are involved with dealing with Vietnamese dong. If you're sitting in the back of a dimly lit taxi, it can be really easy to mix up the 10,000 dong bill with a 100,000 bill. And the taxi drivers will unfortunately happily exploit this. Even if you gave the taxi driver the correct bill, they will insist that you didn't. The broken meter scam is pretty self-explanatory. The driver will insist that the meter is broken and then proceed to quote you an excessive price for the ride, which you as a tourist obviously don't know is overinflated. Instead of relying on taxis, your best bet is to download the Grab app onto your phone before you even arrive in Vietnam. If you've ever used a ride-sharing app like Uber or Lyft, you'll know exactly how to use it. Just make sure you don't select Grab Taxi and only opt for one of the fixed price choices, as Grab Taxi will just link you up with a taxi and you won't have a price guarantee. Another big ride-hailing option that operates in a lot of Vietnamese cities is Shan SM, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. They operate an all-electric fleet of cars, and their pricing is usually just as good, if not better than Grab. If you use Grab or Shan SM, make sure you only pay and communicate through the app. Another thing to be careful of, especially around airports, is people standing around in Grab jackets trying to get you to ride with them. Ignore these people completely, as they are just trying to scam you, and make sure you only book through the Grab or Shan SM app. And also make sure that the driver and the car matches what's displayed in the app. Riding a scooter for the very first time in Vietnam is a big mistake. Traffic in Vietnam is intense, chaotic, loud, and confusing. Vietnamese drivers rely on their horns to communicate their actions, which once you've figured out the code is a little bit helpful, but until then it's extremely confusing. The intense traffic also means that you have to be really skilled at balancing your scooter at low speeds, dodging pedestrians, and being prepared for cars and motorbikes to stop at any time and any place. Luckily, I had experience driving scooters from our visit to Koh Lanta, Thailand, and I spent my childhood in Basel, Switzerland, dodging trams whilst riding my bicycle, so I was fairly confident about my abilities to handle Vietnamese traffic. We rented a scooter in almost all of the places we visited in Vietnam, except for Hanoi, and it was a great way to get around. Having a scooter allowed us to explore hidden temples and random dirt roads that weaved through rice paddy fields. It also saved us a lot of money compared to having to take a Grab everywhere. Unless you're planning on doing the Ha Giang Loop, it is extremely unlikely that anyone will ask or care about whether or not you have a motorcycle driver's license or an international driver's permit. I would strongly recommend that you wear a helmet though, and make sure you read the fine print on your travel insurance to see if they will cover you if you get in an accident without a motorcycle license. We've been using Genki travel insurance for the last few years, and they explicitly state that they will cover you for scooter accidents even if you don't have a motorcycle license. Just make sure that the motor on the scooter is 125cc or less, and you have to wear a helmet. If you want to know more, then check out our link in the description below. Another mistake is renting a scooter from a poorly reviewed rental place. When we visited Sapa, we were limited to the mechanic/scooter rental place that the hotel had to deal with. We rented 2 different scooters from them, and they were both completely run down mechanic specials that were being held together by pure willpower. Both scooters had over 100,000 kilometers on them, which, if you know anything about motorcycles, is a crazy amount. The first one we rented was so choked up that it couldn't even drive up the hill where our hotel was with both my wife and I on it. Whatever rental place you're looking at, make sure you study the reviews carefully, as you can't always trust them. I'll go into more detail on what to look out for later in the video. The most popular option for getting between cities in Vietnam is going to be what I like to call a business class style bus or a sleeper bus. Being able to sleep on the bus sounds great in principle, but for some travelers, taking a sleeper bus is a big mistake. If you're over 5'7" or 170 centimeters, then relying on sleeper buses to travel around Vietnam is going to leave you very tired and sore. A lot of the bus websites will claim that their beds are longer, but as a 6'2", 186 centimeter tall person, I can assure you that they are not. We ended up with a sleeper bus traveling from Sapa to Hanoi, as it had the best departure time for us. My wife, who's 5'6", had no issues getting comfortable and was able to stretch her legs completely. That was most definitely not the case for me, and I ended up having to have my legs sticking out of my compartment for most of the journey. If you have a choice between a sleeper bus and a regular luxury reclining seat, I would definitely opt for the latter, especially if you're on the taller side. On the topic of buses, relying on buses to travel long distances would be a big mistake. Vietnam is a deceptively large country, and traveling long distances by bus is really not that enjoyable, especially in Vietnamese traffic. Luckily, domestic flights can be really cheap. If you're looking at traveling from Hanoi to Hoi An, for example, you can get flights for as low as $46 with Vietnam Airlines. If you're traveling with a very small carry-on, you might be able to fly even cheaper with some of the low-cost airlines. Just be aware that by the time you've added on a heavier or even bigger carry-on, not to mention a checked bag, then your price might actually end up being the same or more expensive than Vietnam Airlines, where you get a free checked bag even with their cheapest economy fares. Trusting the reviews on the major hotel booking sites such as Booking.com, Agoda, Trip.com, and so on and so forth is a huge mistake. I've seen several instances where a hotel is a 9 out of 10 on these sites, but their Google review rating is only 1 or 2 stars. From what I can gather, it seems that there are very strong anti-defamation laws in Vietnam. This makes it very easy for hotels to have bad reviews removed. Somehow Google manages to avoid this. So before you book a hotel, make sure you check its reviews on Google first, starting with the lowest reviews. Unfortunately, it's not just hotel sites you have to worry about. Businesses in Vietnam know how important Google reviews are. This means they will do a lot to ensure a good review. Unfortunately, this doesn't necessarily translate into the obvious tactic of just providing a really good service or experience. Instead, they'll offer you a free drink if you leave them a 5-star review on the spot. Or they might ask you to leave a review before you've even tried the food or spent the first night at the hotel. Sometimes they'll even ask to write the review themselves. And you can usually spot this when all the reviews for a place have similar wording. I found the best way to combat this behavior was to sort by the lowest reviews first, and then determine whether or not I was okay with whatever worst case scenario there was. If you have any questions about visiting Vietnam, let me know in the comments and I will try and answer every single one. A really common mistake that I see people posting about on forums all the time is not leaving enough time for the e-visa. This is a relatively new visa system that Vietnam has implemented, and for the most part it works well. Unfortunately, as with any software system, it's not flawless. As soon as you have your flights booked and you know you're going to be heading off on your trip, I would recommend applying for the visa. You should normally have an approval or a rejection within 4 business days of applying for it. If you do get rejected, it's not always a proper rejection. It could just be a small detail that you missed out on, such as not entering your middle name if it's on your passport. The other mistake that you have to be careful of is that there are several imitation sites pretending to be the official e-visa portal. I've put the link below to the official site where you have to apply. If you're not a US or Canadian citizen, it's also worth checking to see if you actually do need a visa. As a Danish citizen, I didn't actually need to get a visa, but I didn't know this and applied for the e-visa anyway. This led to a bit of confusion at the border, as the border guard didn't understand why I had an e-visa. Another big mistake to avoid is packing your entire medicine cabinet. I've spent a fair amount of time reading through Vietnam travel forums, and the amount of questions about what medication to bring is shocking. Honestly, I don't even know what most of them are. Obviously, if you are on a specific life-savingly critical medication, you should bring it. Apart from that, Vietnamese pharmacies will have everything you need in the unlikely event that you get sick. Even if you find yourself needing antibiotics, you can get those without a prescription in Vietnam. Even if you do get food poisoning, which, as we've discussed, is more common in hotels than from street stalls with a high turnover, a couple of days bed rest and staying hydrated will most likely sort you out. So leave the medicine cabinet at home and save the space for souvenirs. Trying to cross the road at a crosswalk in Vietnam is a big mistake, as Vietnamese drivers are taught from an early age to treat them with the utmost suspicion. All jokes aside, crossing the road in Vietnam is an art form, and it's something you'll have to master very quickly if you actually want to get anywhere, because no one stops for crosswalks unless there's a traffic light. The trick to crossing the road in Vietnam is to take a deep breath, become delirious on the car fumes, and then slowly cross the road at a consistent pace. Just like magic, the traffic will simply weave around you, just like the night bus in Harry Potter. It seems crazy at first, but it really does work on almost any road, no matter how busy it is. Whatever you do, don't stop in the middle of the road or try to run across, as this will make you unpredictable and the drivers won't be able to anticipate your location. Once you reach the local level of confidence, you'll even be able to cross 3 lanes of traffic on a scooter with your entire family riding on the back of it. But I would not recommend that as a tourist. Another big mistake is buying an eSIM online from the big eSIM providers that you'll see advertised everywhere on YouTube. Companies such as Airlo, Saily, or Olafly are just taking local plans and then marking them up. The good news is that you can easily cut out the middleman. When you arrive in Vietnam, you will see several desks in the arrivals area selling SIM cards and eSIMs. Trust me, you really can't miss them. Normally, I would actually skip these places, but in Vietnam, their prices were actually the same as what we were able to get in town directly from the telecom company. We found that the plans from Viettel had the best prices and the best coverage outside of the major cities. You'll need your passport and a little bit of patience, as the setup process isn't the most streamlined. Even if your phone doesn't support an eSIM, you can still get a physical SIM card, and the store staff can help you install it if you didn't bring a PIN. Not carrying cash in Vietnam is also a big mistake. Vietnam is most definitely still a cash society, especially once you get outside of the major tourist areas and cities. If you're traveling along the tourist trail, you don't need to take out too much money at a time, as you can almost always find an ATM. However, if you're planning on traveling to more rural areas, then you'll want to make sure that you have enough money to pay for your accommodation and food for the duration. I also recommend familiarizing yourself with Vietnamese cash and setting up a system in your wallet before you head into town. The main reason for that is that some of the bills do look quite similar, and with all the zeros involved in dealing with Vietnamese dong, it can become a bit confusing. The 10,000 and 100,000 dong bills are notoriously easy to confuse, and a lot of sketchy places will try to take advantage of that. On the topic of cash, the easiest way to get cash out locally is going to be via an ATM. The vast majority of ATMs in Vietnam will charge a fee to take out money. It's usually a few dollars, but that's still going to add up. Luckily, we discovered a bank that does not charge any fees. It's called VP Bank, and it's a smaller bank, so you won't find as many of their ATMs outside of the big cities. But if you're traveling along the tourist trail, just type in VP Bank into Google Maps and you should be able to find one easily. Another option for getting local currency is, of course, to exchange bills from your home country, but using the first exchange place you come across is a big mistake. If you want to exchange money, then doing so in larger denominations and amounts will get you the best rate. From what we experienced, US $100 bills are more desired than the smaller bills. There can be some drastic differences between different exchange places, and the exchange offices with the busiest location might not have the best rate. So make sure you compare the rates at the different exchange offices before you decide on one. Lastly, don't be afraid to negotiate and play the different exchange offices against each other. To make sure you're getting the best rate, you can check the mid-market rate by typing in the amount you want to exchange into Google. For example, $100 to Vietnamese dong, and then see what sum it gives you. That way, you can easily determine which shop is giving you the best rate. Not using Google Translate when traveling in Vietnam is a big mistake. Smartphones may not be healthy for us, but having Google Translate on your phone will make your life a lot easier when traveling Vietnam. The level of English spoken varies greatly across the country. As you would expect, the younger generation in major cities like Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City are going to have a pretty good level of English. But as soon as you venture into the countryside or need to communicate with older shop owners, you will find that you need a lot more than the basic Vietnamese phrases you may have picked up. Luckily, smartphones are ubiquitous across Vietnam, and most people were very proficient with using Google Translate, especially the voice-to-text function. For more unique and brutally honest travel tips that will help you save time and money, check out our latest video here.